So talk to me about today, the 21st century, with the ancient heritage that you have and the knowledge that you have from your own tribe
Okay.
about what's going on.
Well, first I'd like to introduce myself,
Yes.
just because it's a native protocol so that people know who I am. And my name is Rainbow Medicine Walker, and I am an enrolled member of the federally recognized Cherokee Nation. I am the granddaughter of Cherokee Admiral J.J. Clark, Chief Water Dweller and Chief Thunderbird, Ulaga Amoyinehi Wakanyan Zatapa.
Wow.
So something that's really come up strongly for me in regards to justice, when we're talking restorative justice, climate justice, is obviously our systems don't work.
Right.
If they did, we wouldn't have these problems.
That's correct.
So all across America, we've had a major opioid epidemic. And this has hit Native America especially hard. So we have had hundreds of deaths from opioid overdoses. We've had hundreds of Cherokee children taken from their homes because their parents are so addicted they can no longer care for their children. And also the birth defects that come from drug-addicted mothers giving birth. So this is a huge issue in Cherokee land and also in other tribes, and they have filed their own lawsuits as well. It does not work to put drug-addicted people in jail.
No, it doesn't.
And it's a social problem. It's a community problem. And the people who started this ball rolling, who made a lot of money off of this problem, they are the ones who need to be held accountable. And the people who are the victims of this need help and support from the community and effective resources that will help to address the addiction problem.
How is your tribe or the Native peoples working to, like, what are the things that you would have done from ancient stories or today or restorative justice, or what are the things that you can talk about that are in your wheelhouse for how do we fix it? Because we're in the 21st century, and if I'm running for sheriff, there's a lot of things that can be done, but what would be welcomed from your point of view?
Oh, first of all, just that you are bringing out into the public in a very strong way that the old systematic way of dealing with this is not working.
No, it isn't.
And we need change. I mean, that is fundamental because people have to start there. Keep doing the same thing over and over again and the problem's getting worse. We need to stop doing that, and you're doing a fantastic job, in my opinion, of bringing that out into the open.
What can we do to help us just open communications?
Well, that's a really big question because everybody, as you said, every situation is so unique and different.
Why were you willing to let me come here and talk to you?
Well, because I instinctually believe that you have a clear determination to make change for the highest good of our community, for the people. And I think that that resonates with everyone, regardless of cultural differences.
Okay.
So I think just being honest about that, because everybody who cares about these issues knows that what's been going on does not work. The way we've dealt with these problems does not work. And you're bringing that out publicly and you're stating, here's why, and we need to make change. I really believe that that right there is your open doorway. I think the time of secrets is over.
Boy, do I agree.
We can't afford
We
them.
can't. No, we can't.
But we also need to respect that other people's wounds can be very painful. And different generations were taught to keep silent about those wounds and deal with them differently.
Well, silence kept some people alive. I mean,
Exactly.
and that's one of the biggest denial issues we have. And in the white culture too, because as a culture that has preyed upon and caused a lot of wounding because of our cultural heritage coming from lands where we were traumatized and we were abused, and then you bring those things forward and we do what we are entrained to do, and we do what kept us alive and what kept our family alive. And that doesn't always work when we have a planet that's under deep compression, massive change, and all the crises that we're facing.
Exactly.
So learning to step out, I mean, it was scary stepping out to be a white woman running for sheriff. Are you kidding? That's like not normal.
Well, I think being any woman and running for sheriff. bold and it's brave, and I salute you for that.
Well,
and I am very glad, because I believe the time has come. And technically, I understand that the title of sheriff in this county is peacekeeper, or keeper of the peace.
Keeper, conservator of the peace. That's what
Conservator
we're
of the
actually
peace.
supposed to be.
Exactly.
But we've been militarized, and people think that being the sheriff is just about violence and fighting, and you know, you have to defend with more machines and you have to defend with more guns. And it's my experience in life since I was little. That doesn't work.
Well, I just like to share with you briefly, in the Cherokee tradition of my ancestors, the chief of the village, of the community of civil affairs of the Cherokee people, was always called the peace chief.
Oh,
The war chief was the one who went to war against others outside the tribe who threatened the tribe. So
wow.
within the Cherokee community, the war chief held very little power or authority. Only the peace chief had the power to, because it was believed that, you know, within one's own community, mediating disputes was the preferred method.
Wow.
There were very few crimes in the Cherokee Nation that were punished by capital punishment. Murder occasionally sometimes was one. Rape was another. But most crimes were dealt with between your clan and the aggrieved party's clan, and mediated by the peace chief.
Wow.
We didn't have jails. We didn't put people in jail.
You couldn't maintain them anyway.
Well, if they were such a threat to the entire community, then they were executed. But that was very, very rare. I mean, there were so many social systems that supported mediation and working our problems out before they became, intolerable.
Well, and what's really fascinating today is one of the things that we're looking at in the county is whether we're going to build bigger jails, whether we're going to fund more military style facilities, or can we find a way to downsize the jail industrial complex, to downsize the reliance on jails, which in my personal research, I've been researching on it for 9 years, and what I found is that what you perpetuate and what you focus on doing, you build more of. And when we're focused on jailing people and criminalizing people and putting people away, that ends up resulting in crime and punishment and poverty and crisis and emotional disconnect. So we can flip that thing upside down now, especially in Whatcom County, because we don't have one huge jail. We've actually got 3 small ones. We've got, not small, but we've got a juvenile jail, and we've got the main maximum security jail, and then we've got a minimum security facility. So what if we could actually divide the responsibilities, switch this out, and do it really different? There's an opportunity we have in Washington State. Or let's say I am elected sheriff. What would you like to hear from me, or what would you like to see, or what would you like to do to help us start bridging the gaps between these cultures and the pain that has been? I mean, we're the largest. We arrest 11 million people a year and put them in jails. I mean, that's a horrible, that's a lot of people that get damaged. What would you like to hear from me if I were to become the sheriff? That could actually happen. And if you don't want to talk about that, talk about it from a bigger standpoint.
Well, I know there's been a lot with the restorative justice community of creating a mental health court. I mean, things like that, where people aren't necessarily engaging in criminal behavior because they're pathological. They're damaged. They're mentally ill. They're addicted to substances. Those cases, I think, need to be treated differently, and that's already beginning to happen, which I just completely encourage. For our systems to work, we have to trust that these systems are just and fair. And if they're not, we've got problems.
You know, I want to speak to that differently, because over the 9 years that I've been studying on this problem, I've discovered that within our system, we have distrust, and we have dishonor, and we have disrespect of authority, and a lack of accountability for what we as leaders do. And that has permeated our entire political and structural systems. So it's not just accountability at the bottom. When you said that about profit, those people who are making profit on it, there is a whole body of people who have come in, and I called them privateers in one of my videos that I did a few years ago when I discovered it. because jails and the justice system, it's not sustainable. It's fiscally not sustainable. People go down, families go down, societies go down. And so in order to make up for that, what I found is that our culture and our jail and justice system, our school to prison pipelines, they created ways to bring in private prison contractors and private service providers. And then those guys are doing business in the center of the business system. And no one wants to really talk about that. It's coming out now at the federal level when you talk about criminal justice, but we don't talk about it at the local level. And the only place we have power, is in our heart, in my relationship with you as a neighbor, in my relationship with everyone else around us, and in our political system. The only place we have power is, in fact, it's authorized by the voters. We, the voters in our system, give the power to the electeds. But when the electeds take their power from the corporation that they get their paycheck from, it creates a disconnect. And so learning how to deal with that economic disconnect, the moral disconnect, the trust disconnect, and fix it is in fact why I ended up deciding to run for sheriff, because it took me years to diagram these different disconnects. And we can fix it. That's what's so exciting, is that through our hearts and through an understanding, we can forgive each other for all the things we're doing that are not working, and we can fix it. We really can. We can fix it in Bellingham. And then we can share it in the Cherokee Nation, and we can share it in Alaska, and we can share it wherever we go. It's exciting. One of the reasons that I ultimately ended up deciding to run is because the sheriff and the prosecutor and the executive and the people who are in charge of our county political and law enforcement and law and justice systems were not listening to the voters. And that got my dander up. You know, frankly, I started saying, well, why are you not listening to the voters? And when one of the officials said to me, right after county council meeting, he said, I don't work for the voters. I work for the people who get me elected. And every single piece of my antenna went up, and I went, whoa, there's something wrong with that. And I started examining the systems from a whole different level. And I found that we have a habit in this county of not listening to the voters. We listen to, because we've had 40 years of the same establishment. And that 40 years is an oligarchy of sorts. And that 40 years has continued to build habits. And once you build habits, people get used to habits. We can change the habits, though. That's the good news. Once we recognize that we're off course, as a community, we can change and get back on course, and we can do things different. We have an opportunity. So I'm really grateful again that I got to meet you.
Oh, I'm just so delighted we got a chance to share, because it's a time of change on every level. And for me, all of these issues are interconnected.
They are.
You know, the environmental crisis, the, opioid crisis. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And these are big rents in our social fabric. And they need to be carefully looked at and then carefully restitched back together. Well, and this leads into what you were talking about, cultural bridges. You know, if other cultures see that we are actually holding these people accountable for the harm they've done to our environment, to our societies, to our young,
to each other,
then they will be more likely to trust us because they see that we are actually living our talk.
The voters have said no in Whatcom County many times.
Oh, yes.
And we're not, our systems have not been listening. Yeah. It's time to listen.
Yes.
Yes. What if we could actually have a restorative justice meeting between the Whatcom County Council, the sheriff, the chiefs of all of our tribes, and the grandmothers? What if we could hold a summit like that? Wouldn't that be fascinating? I think we should do that. And I think we should do it whether or not I get elected. Imagine that. Like, what if we really could do it? Wow. And have people talk about all the solutions that they have that come from their different cultures, because different cultures have different solutions for reconciling conflict. And once you can talk about the different solutions, the possibilities expand. And then people go, wow, what if we did that? And then what if we did that? And what if we did that? I'm so tickled to have met you and got to talk with you and know who you are and be able to honor the wisdom that you bring forward. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, Joy. Thank you for being willing. It's a tremendous amount of work to come out publicly and do what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
I honor you for that,
Thank you.
Wado.